Hi, I'm Cristina Smith, creator, along with my brother, puzzle master Rick Smith, of the fun puzzle book and profound philosophy series, Yoga for the Brain. Today we are celebrating the release of our fifth book in the series, Inspired Wisdom Word Search, Yoga for the Brain, featuring 60 different authors. We are celebrating by having some conversations with a few of the authors, and today we have with us Jennifer Whitacre. Jennifer is the author of puzzle number 37, Childhood's End. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Christina. It's an honor to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a trauma specialist, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. And by trauma specialist, that can mean a lot of things. I specialize specifically in intergenerational and developmental issues. So it's the developmental component that kind of fed into my puzzle, because I understand how childhood trauma, a lot of times it can imprint on our nervous system and really have a big impact when there's no intention. There doesn't even have to be abuse present. It can be something as simple as the adults in the situation have a vast understanding that's vastly different than the child's experience of a situation. So for example, a child does something that the adult laughs at and they think it's really cute and sweet. Meanwhile, the child's experience is not understanding why they're being laughed at. And it can be a really humiliating experience for a child when it's just lighthearted laughter for the adult. That can imprint trauma. And so that's been a lot of my journey. There's a study that came out about 20 years ago, an ACE study, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And there are only 10 questions on the test. Well, I came out of childhood with a 9 out of 10. So I have a lot of trauma in my background, which gives me experience and the experiential knowledge of how to get through trauma, as well as all the training and the studying that I've done to, kind of put the science behind what I'm doing. So I have the experience and the knowledge, the learning to put in the work that I do.
Well, I feel like a lot of people, they remember their childhoods however they do, and for them it was just life, but they don't know why they have like shame or because of the trauma or anything in their life, and they root to unbury it, and then they want to process it, and that's how you help them, right?
Yes, exactly. And so one of the main things I help people with is getting beyond their perceptions. So many of my clients come in and they don't know the difference between a feeling and a perception. So for example, my clients will come in and, something that's really common is I got into an argument with my boss, or I had a disagreement with my spouse, and I just feel so abandoned. I feel so betrayed. I feel so, worthless or overlooked. None of those are feelings. None of those. Betrayal is not a feeling. Abandonment is not a feeling. Those are all perceptions. And I spent over 25 years in my not just adult life, but teenage and adult life in therapy, with therapist after therapist after therapist who didn't know the difference themselves. And what they did was they validated the story I told myself. They validated the abandonment. They validated the betrayal instead of helping me get beneath it. And it wasn't until I found a skilled therapist that helped me get beneath the story I told myself that I got better. And that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to learn this, because this is how I'm going to be able to help people.
Well, and because we're in a puzzle book, right? We're bringing out the positive side. So we're bringing healing. So for those of us who have felt all these feelings, I mean, you bring a lot of hope and solutions into the puzzle book by working with our inner child. Could you talk a little bit about that?
A lot of what I've been talking about is the inner child, because if you look at children don't have a fully formed frontal cortex, so they're not able to logic and reason the same way adults do. Children don't have the ability sometimes, especially the younger they are, to ask for what they need in healthy ways. So everything comes out through experience. So that's why children throw tantrums. And whenever we yell at a child when they're throwing a tantrum, we're not really understanding where the tantrum is coming from. And when children are repeatedly yelled at for throwing tantrums, instead of having parents that can help them sort that out, we bring those tantrums into adulthood. And then later in life, they keep replaying over and over, and they come out in sneakier ways, which is why people get offended so easily, why people get triggered, why sometimes people have these cyclical habits of chronic complaining, chronic gossiping, even chronic niceness, where somebody can't say no. That's a huge red flag. So, and a lot of it does go back to that inner child constantly acting out and wanting attention from us that we didn't get from our parents when we were children.
So do we give our inner children love and support? Is that how we help ourselves?
Yes, absolutely. And to learn to sit with that tantrum as it comes up inside of you, because as we try to stuff that tantrum down, that will bring up anxiety and depression, which are opposite sides of the same coin. So the more that we try to stuff those feelings and ignore them and bypass them, it helps to process and integrate them. Because what happens is we end up treating that part of ourselves the same way our parents treated us when we were kids, or the same way that we perceive our parents treated us as kids.
Well, and we come by it honestly. It's what we know. It was life to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if as things come up, what we want to do is just to notice them, acknowledge them, and then love that part of ourselves, and then allow it to move on, right?
Yes, and where mindfulness is really, really important, mindfulness helps put space between stimulus and response. Because when there's a stimulus that brings up that fight or flight activation or that tantrum within us, if we don't have the ability to put a little bit of space between the stimulus and the response, then everything is just this reaction that we're not aware of.
Right. So
And
taking a breath becomes really important.
exactly. Taking a breath, or some of those techniques where, you notice that you're getting angry and you just stop and you count backwards from 10. Anything that can put a little bit of space in there to help you come up with a response.
Well, I
And
see. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say there's a skill to it. And that's what I help people do in my life, is to develop that skill so they can start to put space and become more responsive, rather than this reactiveness that we're just not aware that happens.
What a great service you provide. So I can see that you certainly like the puzzle of finding out how we work from
Mm-hmm.
the inside out.
Absolutely.
What other kinds
Yes.
of puzzles do you like to do?
I like, I'm going to say it wrong, Sudoku puzzles.
Sudoku is perfect. Yep.
Okay, yeah, I like Sudoku puzzles. Those are some of my favorites, to kind of fart around with numbers.
Yeah.
And I also like, I don't know that they're really puzzles, but I like good mysteries.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a puzzle.
Yeah, and I have a tendency to, in my personal life, study behavior. Like, I study the Enneagram, and when I'm available, there's like a once a month Enneagram study group here in my city, and I will attend that when I'm home and when I'm available for it, because again, I like to delve deep into human motivation and why people do the things they do. So it doesn't matter if it's a movie or a book or something about true crime, or anything like that, like what feeds that human behavior. And I'm one of those weirdos where I have sympathy for the devil. I admit it. I really do. And I can find compassion for the abuser or the criminal or the perpetrator, especially when I start to learn more and more about what their life experience was, because everything is just a repeat of these trauma patterns.
So you really love the people puzzles.
I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm. I do.
And for puzzles of the word search variety with secret messages to decode, it's kind of like a mystery with a lot of clues. Please
Yes.
pick up a copy of Inspired Wisdom Word Search Yoga for the Brain. You can find it on Amazon.com, Target.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and at bookstores everywhere. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Cristina.